Okay.
Hi, folks. It's Khaled again and Shail here, and we're just having another chat, a follow-up chat, basically talking about the most recent developments. So, Shail, if you want to give us a quick update on what's happening in the war, basically on the operational side. So, where is the military now, and what seems to be the next phase?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not 100% sure that the Israelis know what the next phase is, but let's talk about where the military is now. So, there was more resistance than expected in the north. It took longer to get Jabalia and Sujawiya and a couple of other areas knocked off from the Israeli perspective, but those areas are pretty quiet. Sujawiya is pretty much destroyed. Um, Israel bypassed the middle camps for a while and went to Khan Yunis. And it's right now its main focus is in Khan Yunis, but it decided that in order to keep supply lines and to stop the launching of rockets into Israel, it would look at the middle camps, the camps between Khan Yunis and Gaza City, in particular the El Borej refugee camp. Um, that refugee camp the resistance there seems to be collapsing far quicker than expected, which is good because Israel's finding that in Khan Yunis things are going slower than expected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um, and Israel's moving, but glad to have a map here. Israel's moving also from Khan Yunis into the sort of fatter area at the southeast over there, where you see Kamel,
yes.
Abbasan el Jadida, those areas, all the way to the border. So it's doing all that. What it's notably not doing is going down to Rafah.
Yes.
It's also, yeah, it's leaving Al Mawasi alone too, because that's kind of a refugee zone. But it's leaving Rafah alone, which I think is a real problem. But that seems to be and the military thinks it's a real problem, by the way. The military thinks that even before Khan Yunis is fully secured, which will take ages, because there's so many tunnels there. Even before Khan Yunis is fully secured, you go into Rafah and you take over the Philadelphia route, which is, of course, the border between
Yes.
the Gaza Strip and Egypt. So the military thinks that that is an important point because what's happening now is that Rafah is turning into a Hamas-led city, and it's a city that includes the vast majority of the population of Gaza because that's where most of the refugees are. Um, so they're running that, and then the humanitarian aid that's coming in is increasingly going directly to Hamas, and they're using it to shore up their control over Rafah. So basically, Hamas land is being limited to Rafah, but Rafah includes the majority of the population, so it's turning into a Hamas fiefdom because of the vast amount of refugees there and issues related to Egypt, which you probably know more about. Israel is hesitant. The Israeli government, I should say, is hesitant to go into Rafah. So that's where the war is now. Israel's basically everywhere but Rafah and Al Mawasi, and it's not going near there, and I don't know if it will.
Right, yes. So just to comment on this, so the Philadelphia, well, in Egypt we call it the Philadelphia corridor, essentially, which is a bit of a different term, but it's basically the border with Egypt. So that's what it is essentially. It's this, in a way, this line, which is basically the border between Israel and Egypt and Gaza and Egypt. Um I think we can stop sharing the map for now because we have a pretty clear idea. It's very complicated to be honest because I think this is the main fuss in Egypt now. Everyone is saying that if Israel goes anywhere near this border, then this is a clear violation of the Camp David Accords basically. So it's in
Well,
what Egyptians are saying that this means that it's somehow an implicit declaration of war, or that it makes the peace treaty. That's the challenge that we're facing now. It's a lot of misinformation, disinformation. That it basically means that the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel is no longer there in a way, or it's like 80% void, if you will, which is completely nonsense. It is nonsense because you have to bear in mind that Egypt had to have a lot of military operations in Sinai near Rafah, actually, because they needed to make sure that the border is safe and it's not used by terrorists. And Israelis understood this, and they completely, they had no objections. They said to the Egyptians, we totally understand that you need to do this to keep everyone safe. Please go ahead and do it. We're still at peace. So the whole conversation that you see from Islamists in Egypt is really dangerous, if you ask me. They want to drag Egypt into a confrontation with Israel. It's not going to happen because the Egyptian administration obviously knows this. They know that this is nonsense. They know that it doesn't mean that Egypt is under any kind of threat. But then you see it from Al Jazeera. You see it from all these outlets telling Egypt you need to go to war, essentially. Otherwise, war will come to you, which is the most dangerous thing. A lot of people are saying that, again, Egyptians mostly, and actually there is this Jordanian general who's quite popular now. His name is Doueri, and he's really becoming this icon now of because Hamas mentioned him in one of their videos of the attacks. And they said to him when they were attacking Israeli soldiers, they said to him, analyze this, Doueri, analyze it as in like, because he works for Al Jazeera, and then he analyzes all this operational side. So he's very popular, and you see a lot of people like him basically saying that once Hamas falls in Gaza, or once Israel is really close to the border, then this means that you never know when Israel might get into Sinai and try to retake Sinai. And I think this is the most dangerous thing, because you're really inciting Egyptians against Israelis. You're really telling them something that is not at all true, but that's very dangerous. So I'm not really sure what the military can do. I think I've seen you say that they're planning to let in aid through the sea. The
Yes.
IDF is okay. And would that help?
Yeah, there does that well that will help. Look, what we don't know yet is what the amounts will be. But we do know that by sea you can usually bring more than in any other way, right? That's
Yes.
usually I don't know the exact logistical capacity. Israel would probably have to repair the facilities at the ports there that have not been used in any meaningful way in a long time for anything but, smuggling arms. Um, so if Israel can get most of the aid through Kerem Shalom, which is uh,
Yes.
close to the border, but on the Israeli side of Gaza, and through the sea, then that would help keep most of the aid out of Hamas's hands if Israel handles it correctly. So it's a very important interest. I think it'll probably take about 10 days to start seeing that having any effect, but that would be major. A lot of this is because the Israeli military is asking at this point the government to stop sending in humanitarian aid through Rafah, especially gasoline, but not only gasoline, because at
Yes.
this point it's just helping Hamas. Hamas is just taking the vast majority of it, and use even the food. It takes the food that's supposed to be free for the population, sells it at exploited prices, and then keeps the money for its wartime purposes. So everything is going to Hamas, and yeah, if it would come in through the sea, Israel's already there where the ports are, so that would be very helpful in that regard.
Yes. And do you think so? Do you think that Israel is actually winning right now, the war in Gaza?
Militarily,
Yes.
absolutely, absolutely, it's winning. Yeah, absolutely. My fear, and at this point, it's a very big fear, is that Israel will lose diplomatically, strategically, by not sticking the landing, by fumbling the diplomatic phase at the end. I think there's too much nervousness right now about the military push and not
Yes.
enough nervousness about the diplomatic push because the military push is flawed, but is moving ahead, and the diplomatic push is not moving ahead at all. So that's where I think Israel is in trouble militarily. If you had shown the map, the current map, to me before the war started and said this is where we'll be by the end of December, I would have said, wow, that's really good. That's very impressive.
Yes.
Israel's basically everywhere. Um, and also the losses that Israel's taken. So last I saw was 164 soldiers in the ground assault, 500 and something, including October 7th. Losing less than 200 soldiers so far is amazing. So on that level and destroying entire brigades, I think militarily, it's hard not to call this a success. There's the expectations Israel set were a little bit too high out of the excitement. Israel did this in the Second Lebanon War too, saying, then they said we're going to kill Nasrallah and we're going to get our boys back, and same thing now. So Israel's talking about getting the hostages back through a military action. That was never likely. Talking about
Yes.
killing Sinwar, that was never likely, at least not anytime soon. And destroying Hamas completely, as in having no capacity, that was never likely. So the trouble is, Israel set too high standards with its professed goals. But as far as its actual achievements on the ground, they're great. And they're within a month, like we're talking about the end of January when the escalation was going to end. That's a whole other story. It may end earlier. But let's say it goes till the end of January. Israel will have achieved enough, I believe, militarily to have the leverage it needs to get a good diplomatic deal. What it's not doing is it's not initiating enough diplomatically, and that's where I'm concerned it might not win.
I think that's a very good point. Just on Sinwar, because this is a very good. I think this is essentially one of the most important points for me, because what Arab media is saying basically is that Israel is not winning; it's losing. It's losing because it's losing too many soldiers. One of the numbers I've seen from a very prominent Islamist was that Israel lost so far 4,000 soldiers, and that is entire, and that it's basically hiding the numbers from the public, and it's sort of telling lies. And quite honestly, I also want to mention something else. They always use Israelis who are either very left leaning or very against the government, or say some sort of controversial statement to back up all this stuff. So they show, I think they've shown a retired general or something who's saying some very critical statements on the IDF. And then they said, look, you see this? We're telling you they're lying. They lost, thousands of soldiers, and they're saying only less than 200. So that's a challenge. But also Sinwar is one of the main points. They keep saying that Israel will announce that it won this war if Sinwar is dead. Sinwar is still not dead. And mostly, again, this is what they say, most of the prominent leaders of Hamas are still completely fine. None of them have been touched or found. And that means that Israel is losing.
I mean, okay, so these are two separate points. First is the casualties. Casualties, they're lying, right? The casualties are what the casualties are. By the way, if Israel was sustaining more casualties than it is, a lot more casualties than it is, I don't think that would actually stop Israel from continuing. I don't think the
Yes.
Arab side quite understands the determination Israel has to destroy Hamas. I don't think it's anything they've ever run into before. I don't think they fully understand it. Israel is grimly determined and would be willing to lose way more soldiers than it is, and I mean way more, in order to accomplish the goal, because it
Yes.
feels that this is an existential war. There have been missions in the past in Gaza, 2014 or whatever, that losing this many soldiers would have caused Israel possibly to withdraw in defeat. But that's just not where we are now. So that's something that they don't seem to understand. Even their exaggerations don't really mean that as much as they think. But the leaders, yeah, that's really embarrassing for Israel. And I think Israel can win without killing them. It really can. There's a deal brewing where they go into exile, and if
Yes.
Israel captures enough of Gaza, they may have to. They may
Yes.
have to.
I think
So I
eventually they
don't
will
think,
have.
yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I don't think that any of this means that Israel is losing, but certainly the fact that Israel hasn't gotten to the leaders is much more consequential, and is a real problem. But it
Yes.
shows again the lack of Israeli intelligence. Israeli intelligence services, I hate saying this, but Israeli intelligence services are highly overrated at this point. There's really no doubt about that anymore. They don't have the ability to really penetrate Hamas and know what Hamas is doing. We've seen that not only with the October 7th plan, but also with the fact that they can't get to the hostages and they can't get to the main leadership. So the Israeli fighting style in Gaza, while quite successful, has been incredibly blunt. going in, destroying brigade after brigade, which is, methodical. But the intelligence services, they ain't what they used to be. Whatever glory they used to have, at least when Hamas is concerned, they're showing continued failure. I hate saying this, but it's true.
That's very interesting because from my view, I think to be honest, one of the main casualties, Israeli casualties of this war is the image of Israeli intelligence. That is a major casualty. And I think that's really problematic for many reasons, especially when we see Israelis saying, you know what, we're going to come after you wherever you are. Mossad is going to hunt you down. And now we see this, and it just doesn't add up because it feels like if you can't get Sinwar, how can you get somebody who's hiding in Qatar? Or how can you get somebody who's hiding in Turkey? And that for me is really concerning. But I want to also mention something else. So there were allegations that the head of the Egyptian intelligence had been in touch directly with Sinwar, so that he was taken somewhere by the Gazans, by Hamas, and wherever that was, somebody said a tunnel, somebody said a room, whatever it is, there was a landline there, and he could speak directly to Sinwar. And then somebody else mentioned when I posted this, somebody asked me a question and said, well, why doesn't Israel track this landline if they know that the head of the Egyptian intelligence has actually this access through Hamas? Um, do you have any information on this, or do you have any speculation or any comments?
No, no, I don't know anything
Yes.
about that story. You would know more than I do. As far as I know, Sinwar, Israel does not know where Sinwar is or have any intelligence on it. And if it did, because it's such a high goal of the campaign, it would use that information. But if there's something going on here with Egyptian intelligence, I'm not aware of it.
Yes. No, it's very interesting because the information we had that was publicly available, and obviously this is not entirely credible because we don't really know how credible or not credible it is. But it was basically some reports shared that the head of the Egyptian intelligence went into a tunnel, like I said, or a room or whatever, and there was a landline there, and he could speak directly to Sinwar. And this was ahead of the latest Egyptian proposal to end the war. Um, Now, the thing I want to say on this is that number one, even if this did actually happen, Israeli intelligence would never jeopardize its relationship with its Egyptian counterparts by trying to track what was happening or by trying to basically target the head of the Egyptian intelligence, because this means that the Egyptians themselves would be not really a trustworthy partner in these negotiations, and that would put the whole process at risk and the hostages at risk. So there really isn't. I mean, this was one of the main things that were discussed in Egypt as well, and I think Israel is being the adult in the room. You can't act like this, and some people just expect like, oh, just go and grab the intelligence and just shoot him, shoot Sinwar, and that's really wrong. But I just wanted to mention this because it's been causing a lot of just basically a lot of misinformation again and disinformation. Uh,
Maintaining good relations with Egypt right now it's always been important, but it's more important now maybe than ever. In order to win this diplomatically and politically without Egyptian support, yeah, I don't think it would be worth it, honestly, to jeopardize all that just to have some chance to get at Sinwar. I actually, as much as you would want to get Sinwar, I don't think it's worth it.
exactly, yes. I think this is what everyone who understands how this conflict works, and obviously the decision makers on the military side, the intelligence side, they realize this, and we really need to bear this in mind. But I think this brings us to the obvious question, which is what's next? So the Egyptian proposal was refused by Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and by even Abbas himself. Do you want to actually talk about the proposal itself, or what information you had on it, or what happened in the lead to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the proposal is still very much alive,
Yes.
and I think the proposal is the main reason that Hamas and Islamic Jihad are clinging to not having a temporary hostage deal, but rather having an end of the war. There's basically two tracks going right now. There's the Qatari track and there's the Egyptian track. The Qataris are trying to revive their track, which is based on a humanitarian pause. and releasing the 40 hostages that Israel wants released, women and children and some elderly and sick. Israel would rather focus on that. Hamas and Islamic Jihad would rather focus on the Egyptian proposal, which includes ending the war. The reason they've rejected it is because they're not ready to go into exile because they don't feel defeated. They're not defeated yet. Israel needs to make sure that they feel defeated. But the fact is that they're a lot more interested in that uh, kind of deal and that kind of final deal. And if they insist on that, Israel might have to move in that direction as well. Both Egypt planned it very well, I think.
Yes.
They put in they kind of copy pasted some demands from both sides. They made it appealing enough to both sides that both sides will want to work with it. And to some extent, I think the fighting right now is an attempt to change that deal in the direction that each one wants. What Israel really doesn't want in that deal is for Hamas to be involved in the day after government in any way. That's a red line that they're not willing to cross. And for Hamas, they don't want to go into exile. Also,
Yes.
how those two things go together is also a good question. Um, so we're at this point, that's the document I think that both sides are working with, trying to improve it based on the situation on the ground. So I think Egypt, with the careful talks with Israeli officials and with Khaled Mashal and Hania was in Cairo. They came to a pretty good formulation, which has put them right now in the driving seat as the main mediator, overtaking Qatar.
Yes.
And that's another thing. Israel would rather have strengthened Egypt than strengthen Qatar. It sees Qatar at this point as Hamas collaborators, and it's had to cooperate with Qatar to get hostages out. But if it could not do that, it won't. And that's another reason I think the Egyptian track is more promising than the Qatari track. So both sides are more attracted to it for various reasons, and that's why I think it's very much alive. As soon as it came out, I put out a YouTube. I said everyone's gonna reject it, but
Yes.
they're not really gonna reject it. They'll keep working with it.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. I think you and I agreed that this is the basis of then for the end of the war, basically. This will, I mean, people have to accept, I think Israelis and everyone else, they have to accept that all wars come to an end. And most wars come to an end with some kind of political agreement. Obviously, it doesn't mean you recognize terrorists. That's not the case. But it means that you have to have an agreement, even understand how, well, to basically come up with a plan for Gaza after the war. That has to happen. Um, and just on the Egyptian proposal, so I have seen reports, funny enough, that mention that actually the Egyptians ignored Abbas. So they didn't go to the Palestinian Authority and say, look, we're planning to do this. They just completely ignored him and went to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas, which was really quite funny. I quite enjoyed that, to be honest, uh, because they want to get rid of him. So do the Emiratis, by the way, and the Saudis. They all want to get rid of Abbas, and so does Israel, I believe. Do you think Israel wants to get rid of Abbas at this stage as well?
Oh, absolutely. Everyone wants to get rid of Abbas. Well, okay. When I say everyone, there's always the caveat. There's the Netanyahu strategy of divide and conquer that led to a lot of this war. You have a weak, pathetic PA in control in the West Bank, and you have what they thought was in other ways a weak and pathetic Hamas running Gaza, and that way the Palestinian national movement is split and not a threat. And I'm sure some part of Netanyahu still wants Abbas in there because he's old, everyone hates him, he's corrupt,
Yes.
and he has no power. And that's attractive to Netanyahu on a certain level. However, the vast majority of Israelis want Abbas out for different reasons. You have the right wingers who, your Ben Gvirs and your Smotriches, they say he's just as bad as Hamas, which of course is not true, but that's what they say. So he should be
Yes.
removed and replaced, I guess, with a bunch of settlements. I don't know, whatever, their plan is. And then you have the left wingers, or center left, who say that he doesn't have legitimacy among the Palestinians, he should be replaced
Yes.
by a Palestinian Authority that has more legitimacy. And in that, they're in sync with the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. They want to get rid of Abbas for exactly that reason. One of the reasons that Iran has so much power in the West Bank and in Gaza, and it's in the West Bank too, because Hamas is so popular there now.
Yes.
And the Islamic Jihad is running the Jenin refugee camp and all this stuff that people aren't really talking about. One of the reasons for that is because the PA is so weak. And that's a losing hand for the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, United States, and that whole alliance. The stronger the PA is, the weaker Iran is. So this is an interest that this axis shares, and Israel shares that too. A strong PA that is not corrupt, but also that's reformed and no longer supporting terrorism is a very important Israeli interest. Unfortunately, the prime minister he doesn't see that on some level. He's very opposed to a Palestinian state that might emerge from that. But also on the level of his personal political survival, he doesn't want to pursue that. So that's why I say Israel, yes and no, wants that.
Yes.
Netanyahu, at the end of the day, Netanyahu does not want that. And that's one of the reasons I think he really needs to go as we head towards the post-war solution.
Yes. No, I completely agree. And I think this is why you have this paradox where we've got you want something, but you understand that it's really hard to get and almost impossible to get. So you want somebody, a PA which is reformed and actually quite, capable to govern the West Bank or even, Gaza, who knows? But at the very same time, you realize that that's nearly impossible because anyone who's, quite strong or can actually command some authority is not going to be pro-Israel, is not going to be pro-peace, or at least not anti-Semitic. They're going to be, the same mindset, jihadist, and basically militant against Israel. So I think that's a very interesting remark there, and also it's the same reason why the UAE and Saudi Arabia want to get rid of Hamas because of Iran. So they see that once this goes, the region is going to be a bit safer for us. But I'm still not sure what's next because for me that's the challenge. What do you do? I don't think anyone has an answer, to be honest. I've been talking to people and I don't think anyone has an answer.
Well, an answer what should happen next or what will happen next?
The answer is, I think in this case, what are Israel's red lines and what are the red lines that essentially make it really quite impossible to reach a compromise that everyone accepts, like Israel, UAE, Egypt, Saudi Arabia?
I don't think it's impossible at all to reach an agreement. I think that with Netanyahu, it might be impossible just because of his personal and ideological preferences. But the truth is, there is a lot that's uniting every country that you mentioned, and Israel has a once in a lifetime opportunity to shape the future solution according to its needs. Because one of the advantages of winning a war and occupying a territory is you have a ton of leverage. You can say, I am not going to remove my troops unless A, B, and C. Now, you may not get all of it, but you're going to get a lot more of it than when your tanks are sitting in Israel and Hamas is sitting in Gaza, or when Israel has to withdraw, let's say, under terrorism at some point, like it did from Lebanon. In Lebanon, it didn't use the successfully the leverage that it had by occupying there in order to get a diplomatic solution. It tried anyway. That's a different story. But this is the time to do it because otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a failed state in Gaza. You're going to end up with Hamas still there. You're going to end up with the same Palestinian Authority there. All these different things that aren't good when you could be using the will of the international community, all the countries that you mentioned, all the money behind them to build a Palestinian Authority that's reformed, that's not preaching anti-Semitism, that's not supporting terrorism, that's less corrupt. It's not going to be anything ideal. It's not going to be great, but it can be a lot better than it is now. And what everyone agrees on too is that at first it should be technocratic, not
Yes.
ideological. So it's you can avoid all the stuff you said about it being very pro-terror by having it focus on day-to-day administration elements while you try to put into shape a cultural change. Now, I'm not naive. This process will be difficult and will probably not succeed as fully as we want. but it offers a promise to be a lot better than the alternatives. And there's no real conflict of interests between people like Benny Gantz and the what the Saudi Arabians want, what the United Arab, what the UAE wants, and what the US wants. There's snags, but these are things that can be worked out. And the EU wants to remove anti-Semitism and terror support from the PA. I've seen statements from them saying that this is the time to take advantage of that goodwill and get them involved because they've always been the main donors to the PA. This isn't going to last. Israel has to take advantage of this opportunity. And no, there are no red line differences that really matter that are keeping this apart that aren't political,
Well, but
domestic Israeli political.
on this point, so we're talking about a technocratic state, but that actually means a state, means a Palestinian state. So if the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Egyptians say, well, you have to recognize a Palestinian state, is Israel actually ready to do this?
Well, I mean, yes, if there was a Gantz-led government, they would be willing to say, I know people in that party, I know people around Gantz. What they would be willing to say is, we are willing to have a vision of two states once the PA undergoes a process of reform. So they'll say the magic words, which by the way Israel has said many times before. You know,
Yes.
it's not like Israel's never said we want a two-state solution. It said so many times. The first one who said so openly was Ariel Sharon, but Barak and Rabin pursued that as well. Uh, Netanyahu said that in the Bar Ilan speech as well. So it's not like Israel's never said a two-state solution is a thing. Right now, it has a government filled with extremists, and saying it will make the government collapse. That's all. But Israel's position has been a two-state solution for a long time, and yes, I think people will be willing to do that with caveats, with conditions, and if the PA reforms. And Gantz right now is ahead in all the polls, so mentioning him is not, you know, fanciful. He has about double his coalition. If there was elections right now, would double Netanyahu's. It's probably not what's
Yeah,
going to happen in reality, but it shows he's likely to be prime minister at some point.
right. So I think this brings me to another question. And do you believe that Bibi needs to go now? Do you believe that if he stays, we're not going to get anywhere? If he goes, we are more likely to get somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I've had a little bit of an evolution in my views. I guess not so much. I was very against Bibi before the war. Once the war started, I said we need to stick with him so he can pursue the war relentlessly. I think I was absolutely correct. I think he's pursued the war better than I expected, at least by a little bit. But now, when it's peacetime, he's already showing not only that he's not able to make the concessions and lead diplomatically, he's not even willing to gather people to talk about it.
Yes.
That's where we are right now. He keeps preventing other elements of the government from talking to the military and the Shabak and the Mossad, and he delayed gathering of the war cabinet on it 4 times. The last time today it was supposed to meet, and he canceled it, and instead they're going to meet in the wider cabinet, which includes all the people who are, let's say, not big fans of peace in the government, so that conversation will go nowhere. So he doesn't have the you know the balls to have this conversation, never mind to actually put it into practice. So yeah, it's time to start thinking about how Netanyahu is removed. Otherwise,
Yes.
Israel's going to end up with a failed state next to it, and we'll have to do all this again in 15 years.
Yes. So actually, just on this point, so he cannot, well, he needs to have the wider cabinet so that he can have Ben Gvir and his mates, basically. If it's just the wider cabinet, then those people are out, and that means that he could be potentially outnumbered, basically, in the decision making. Is that the case?
Yes, but it's more than that, though. He wouldn't only be outnumbered. He'd probably end up agreeing with Gantz and Eisenkot on most things because he doesn't want to have to go and talk to Biden later and say, I'm the one who vetoed it against most of my cabinet. And then
Yeah.
instead, what happens here is you have a free-for-all of everyone, and that also makes the Likud ministers who can kind of go either way go more to the right because they're trying to compete with the right wing nut jobs. And if you've seen any of the leaks, from the wider cabinet meetings during the war, they're insane. They're insane.
Yes.
No work is done there, none at all. And this will be the worst one yet by a mile. I guarantee it, because there's never been anything this contentious before. It's going to be terrible. And Netanyahu, by the way, didn't want that. What he wanted was first to postpone it, but once he wanted to do it, he wanted to get the small wartime cabinet to get something he could talk to the Americans and the Saudis about, that kind of thing. But he doesn't have the balls to pursue it, and he ends up caving. And that's why he has to go. Ben-Gvir has to go. Smotrich has to go.
Yes.
It's a real problem for existential problem for Israel winning this war.
Yes. Well, thanks very much for this. I mean, it's a brilliant conversation. We're running out of the time again, I'm afraid. But we'll have to do another one to catch up on this and see where the cabinet goes, basically, and what decisions they make.
Anytime, anytime.
Thanks very
Always a
much.
pleasure talking to you.
Yes, same as well. Thanks, Dale. Bye.
Thanks. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.